Alright guys, welcome back to another edition of Raw Intuition Inside Scoop. Today is a very special interview that I have for you, and I'm very excited to be able to bring you some potentially life-saving information from one of the most influential doctors in the plant-based movement today. You may be familiar with him from his appearances in popular documentaries such as What the Health and Forks Over Knives, or from his groundbreaking book Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. If you haven't figured it out yet, I am speaking with Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn Jr., who was a surgeon, clinician, and researcher at the Cleveland Clinic for more than 35 years, where he was a member of the Board of Governors and president of the staff. In 1991, Dr. Esselstyn served as the president of the American Association of Endocrine Surgeons and organized the first national conference on the elimination and prevention of heart disease. In 2005, he became a first recipient of the Benjamin Spock Award for Compassion in Medicine. Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn also was an Olympic gold medalist in rowing and was awarded the Bronze Star as an Army surgeon in Vietnam. Dr. Esselstyn and his wife, Ann Cryle Esselstyn, have followed a plant-based diet for more than 20 years, and they work together to counsel patients in Cleveland. So, without further ado, let's get to the interview with Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn Jr. All right, Dr. Esselstyn, thank you very much for joining us today and sharing your knowledge and expertise in plant-based nutrition and the effects on cardiovascular health. So, could you start off with giving us just a little bit of a background on how your childhood was, what your diet and lifestyle was like, and how that progressed as the years went on?
Well, that's pretty simple. I mean, I grew up on an Aberdeen Angus beef farm and a dairy farm. And of course, I was brought up cholesterol holic. And that was the way it was going through college at Yale and at medical school at Western Reserve University School of Medicine in Cleveland. And then I took my postgraduate surgical training at the Cleveland Clinic. After that, I spent a year in the Army at Fort Bragg, and the next year I was a combat surgeon in Vietnam in 1967, 68. Then I came back to Cleveland, and I was asked to join the staff in general surgery at the Cleveland Clinic, where I became chairman of the breast cancer task force and head of the section on thyroid and parathyroid surgery. And it was in my role as chairman of the breast cancer task force that I became increasingly disillusioned with the fact that for no matter how many women I was doing breast surgery, I was doing absolutely nothing for the next unsuspecting victim. And that led to a bit of global research on my part, which readily revealed that there were multiple countries where breast cancer rates were 30 and 40 times less frequent than the United States, like Kenya. And even in the rural Japan in the 1950s, breast cancer was very infrequently identified, yet as soon as the Japanese women would migrate to the United States for the second and third generation, they now had the same rate of breast cancer as their Caucasian counterpart. Well, even perhaps more compelling was cancer of the prostate. In the entire nation of Japan in 1958, how many autopsy-proven deaths were there from cancer of the prostate? 18 in the entire nation, the most mind-boggling public health figure I think that I've ever encountered. By 1978, 20 years later, they were up to 137, which pales in comparison to the 28,000 who will die this year in this country, cancer of the prostate. So, somewhere along the line, it became apparent that there were multiple cultures where cardiovascular disease was virtually non-existent. Okinawa, rural China, the Papua Highlands, Central Africa, the Tarahumara in northern Mexico. And the common denominator was they were all whole food, plant-based, without oil. So I began thinking that I was going to have to do a bit of research, because there was going to be so much more bang for the buck. If we could, for instance, if we could get people to eat to save their heart, then they would also likely favor the elimination of the common Western cancers of breast, prostate, colon, and perhaps pancreatic. So that sort of became the background. And it was in 1985 that I went to the Department of Cardiology, Aspirin. About 24 patients. That was a small number, but I had to still carry out all my surgical responsibilities. So it was a small study. But as my late brother-in-law said, these patients were Essies, walking dead. Failed their first or second bypass. They had failed their first or second angioplasty. They were too sick for this procedure, or they had refused, and 5 were told by their expert cardiologist they wouldn't live out the year. And those 5 made it beyond 20 years. And we began to see some striking results of patients who were able to not only halt their disease, but begin to get disease reversal. And that was very provocative and very exciting.
Can you give just a brief explanation of what heart disease is?
Well, there are multiple types of heart disease, but what we were primarily focusing on is the primary killer of women and men in Western civilization, which is coronary artery heart disease, where the arteries fill up with plaque and flow to the heart muscle is compromised and sometimes cut off completely, resulting in a heart attack. But obviously there are other diseases of the heart. There's hypertensive cardiovascular disease, there is valve disease, there are viral diseases of the heart, cardiomyopathy. But we were primarily focusing on cardiovascular disease, that is blockage of the coronary arteries, which is not from the genes, not from stress. It's a foodborne illness. Coronary artery disease is a toothless paper tiger that need never ever exist. And if it does exist, it need never ever progress. This is a completely benign foodborne illness.
What would be some of the foods that these cultures were eating that were seeming to protect them from heart disease?
To answer that question, we really ought to make your audience familiar with an area where all experts would agree, which is where does this disease have its onset, its beginning, its inception. And where coronary artery disease had its beginning is when we progressively injure the life jacket or the guardian of our blood vessel, which happens to be that delicate innermost lining called the endothelium, E-N-D-O-T-H-E-L-I-U-M. The endothelium is magical because it produces a remarkable molecule of gas called nitric oxide. And nitric oxide has wonderful properties. One, nitric oxide keeps all the cellular elements within our bloodstream flowing smoothly like Teflon rather than Velcro. It keeps things from getting sticky. Number 2, nitric oxide is the strongest blood vessel dilator in the body. You climb stairs, the arteries to your heart, the arteries to your legs, they widen, they dilate. That's nitric oxide. Number 3, nitric oxide protects the wall of the artery from becoming thickened, stiff, or inflamed, protects us from getting high blood pressure or hypertension. Number 4, this is the absolute key. Nitric oxide in a plentiful, normal amount will protect us from ever developing blockages or plaque. So literally everybody on the planet, whether they're in Rochester, Minnesota, whether they're in Chicago, New York City, Berlin, London, if they have cardiovascular disease, it's because by now in all those preceding decades, they have so sufficiently trashed, injured, and compromised the capacity of their endothelial cells to make nitric oxide. They simply don't have enough to protect themselves from making blockages and plaque. But the good news is that's not a malignancy. And once you can get patients to understand how they produce this disease, you can also then empower them as the locus of control to halt and reverse this disease by stopping ever again eating those foods that are going to further trash an already train-wrecked endothelium. What are the foods that every time they pass your lips, you injure the endothelial lining? They are any drop of oil, olive oil, corn oil, soybean oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, coconut oil, palm oil, oil on the cracker, oil on the piece of bread, oil on the salad dressing. Oil injures endothelial cells. Any of you eat oil. Also, anything that has a mother or a face. Meat, fish, chicken, fowl, turkey injures endothelial cells, as does anything that is dairy. Milk, cream, butter, cheese, ice cream, yogurt, and sugary foods, sugary drinks, cakes, pies, cookies, stevia, agave, excesses of maple syrup, molasses, and honey. And I'm not a great fan for patients who have heart disease of nuts. And I'm a bit of an outlier there, and the reason I'll share with you is this. One, nuts have a lot of saturated fat. Nuts are highly addicting. And how many people do you know who will eat one nut? If Dr. Esselstyn said for patients with heart disease that nuts are okay, they're going to be in the glove compartment, they'll be in the bathroom, the kitchen, the hallway, the bedroom, the living room. Yeah, and that's just too much saturated fat. And although there are multiple studies, most of which have been funded by the nut companies, that'll show somewhat superior results in a decreased amount of heart disease in those taking nuts. I don't want that. I don't want a decreased amount. I want it to be eliminated. I have yet to see a single study where you take patients who are seriously ill with cardiovascular disease and feed them peanut butter and cashew sauces and nuts that they all they want, where they have reversed their disease. That doesn't happen. So those are the foods we want to eliminate to protect the endothelium. Now, what are you going to eat then? You're going to eat all these marvelous whole grains for your cereal, bread, pasta, rolls, and bagels. 101 different types of legumes, beans, and lentils. All these marvelous red, yellow, green leafy vegetables, white potatoes, sweet potatoes, and some fruit. And that's pretty much the story.
And in your book, Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease, your lovely wife has come up with 150 great tasting plant-based meals or recipes. What's it been like traveling around and educating people on this information with your wife, Anne?
Well, it's very exciting.
Yeah.
But the scene these days is so different than it was 32 years ago when I got started, because it really is quite remarkable to see, for instance, to have a conference on plant-based nutrition for physicians. I remember being the program chairman and the director of what I think was the first one back in 1991 in Tucson. We repeated that in 1997 down at Disney World in Florida. And it's very exciting to see now, this year, I think that I've been already to 5 or 6 conferences on plant-based nutrition, and some of those have been attended by 900 and some odd doctors, which is very exciting to see the increasing awareness, because it's really not, it's not only heart disease that is affected. The power of plant-based nutrition for chronic illness is just something that's absolutely unbelievable. We're not only talking about prevention, we're talking about reversing these diseases. Heart disease, strokes, right? Diabetes, hypertension, high blood pressure, and vascular dementia, or Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, asthma, allergies, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, multiple sclerosis. I mean, it's really quite exciting when you think of the spectrum of chronic disease that can be absolutely vanquished. And the exciting thing is, these patients don't have to take some hideous, expensive medication that has awful side effects for the rest of their lives. You're just, all you're going to do is eat. There's no extra cost.
Yeah.
But you got to be careful of what you eat. If you're going to eat out of a box, a bag, or a can, as a general rule, you've got problems. Oh, there are exceptions. Sure, you can get black beans in a can that are going to be safe. But when people start putting things in boxes and cans and bags, they're going to preserve it, and then suddenly they got oil, and now you're in trouble. But when you go into a grocery store and you go to the produce section, and you pick up bok choy, Swiss chard, kale, collards, collard greens, no label. It's just like they came out of the ground. There's no label. Now, I should add one little wrinkle on the what we do for patients. It's not in the book because it's something we started in the last 6.5 years. But if I have somebody who has coronary artery heart disease and blockages to the arteries to their heart, I ask them to try to imagine getting their head inside that artery and looking at that plaque. What they would see would be an absolute cauldron of oxidative inflammation. So we need antioxidants. No, don't go down to the health food store and buy a jug of pills that says antioxidant, because it doesn't work and it's going to be harmful. We want you to get your antioxidants from food. All right, what food? Food that is high in what we call ORAC value, ORAC, oxygen radical absorptive capacity. So this means that if you're having raspberries, blueberries, strawberries, and blackberries on your oat cereal in the morning, that's a terrific start, but nothing can trump the antioxidant value of green leafy vegetables. So I need these patients who are sick with heart disease to chew a green leafy vegetable 6 times a day after it has been boiled in water 5.5 minutes, about the size of their fist. And you always must anoint this with several drops of a delightful balsamic vinegar. Why? Because the acetic acid in the vinegar has been shown to restore the nitric oxide synthase enzyme contained within the endothelial cell that is responsible for making nitric oxide. And they're going to chew this alongside their breakfast cereal, again as a mid-morning snack, again with your lunch and sandwich, that's 3, mid-afternoon, 4, dinner time, 5, and I adore it when they have that evening snack of kale. What are you doing? All day long you're basking and bathing that horrible oxidative cauldron of inflammation with nature's most powerful antioxidants. Now, what are the greens I'm talking about? They are bok choy, Swiss chard, kale, collards, collard green, beet greens, mustard green, turnip greens, Napa cabbage, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, cilantro, parsley, spinach, and arugula, and asparagus. And the top 6 are kale, Swiss chard, spinach, arugula, beet greens, and beets.
Delicious. Yeah. So, do you have a favorite meal or some staples that you enjoy that you can share?
Any one of those 140 recipes that are in that book that you just looked at.
Yeah. Yeah.
My favorite would have to be beans and rice.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Simple, right?
And a salad on the side. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. The simpler, the better. And yeah, all those recipes look delicious.
And you can make a delicious cheeseless pizza too.
Yeah, cheeseless pizza, yeah, it tastes just as good and you don't feel as greasy and bloated afterwards. So, okay, well, great. You covered a lot of information there, very helpful. So, where can people find more about you or any of the resources that you provide for people to educate themselves?
I think there are 3 things that can help. One would be to look at the movie Forks Over Knives, get kind of an overview. Uh, my website, dresselstyn.com, has all of our scientific publications plus a number of presentations that I've given. And then they can find some videos on that as well. And they can read my book.
So the overall message is that our most powerful tool to prevent and possibly reverse chronic illness like heart disease, arthritis, and all the others is what's on the tip of our fork. Is that correct?
Right now, it's just so challenging to think that so many of Americans are looking at, as they become more senior, they're going to acquire some sort of debilitating chronic illness.
Yeah.
That's absolutely so unnecessary. So unnecessary. And it's as if the heavens have opened and presented to the medical profession the strongest tool in their toolbox they've ever had, where without pills, without procedures, you empower the public to become the locus of control to absolutely annihilate chronic illness. And it's really making us literally on the cusp of what could be a seismic revolution in health.
Yeah.
But the only way it's going to happen is not with a procedure or a pill. It's going to happen when we educate the public as to what is the lifestyle, and most specifically, what is the nutritional literacy that will empower them to make this happen.
Yes, completely agree. So I guess the other question that I wanted to ask was, through all your years, all the thousands of physicians and other colleagues that you have educated and given presentations to, all your awards and accolades, what's the number one thing that you're most fond of or most proud of that you have accomplished over your career or your personal life?
Well, I think right now that the thing that makes me as passionate as ever about medicine is how you can reverse disease. For instance, nothing to me is more exciting than to see a patient coming into you crippled with cardiovascular disease, threatened with bypass surgery or other interventions, and have them say, wait a minute, I want to try this first, and have their disease disappear. It is so powerful, so rewarding, and especially exciting when they have relatives who see what has happened to them, how they've turned it around, and then the rest of the family comes on board and says, I think we ought to do this as well. That has to be the ultimate reward.
Terrific. All right. Well, thank you again. It's been such an honor to speak with you and get some of this valuable information to share with people. Everybody watching, definitely check out Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn's book, Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. It's got so much valuable information, whether you are dealing with heart disease or any chronic illness. The information in this book can definitely help you out. Makes a great gift as well. So, and like we said, there's plenty of delicious recipes in there. Plant-based eating is not boring. You can definitely make it just as exciting, if not more exciting, than standard eating goes. So again, Dr. Esselstyn, thank you so much. I very much appreciate you taking time out of your day to share this with us. And guys, I will put the links to all of his resources in the description box below, and you can check them out there. So have a great day, and guys, until the next video, always follow your raw intuition.
Detoxify your mind and body. Be the change you want to see. Small steps towards living better. Small steps to where I want to be.